So this will be a continuation of my series, When the Money is Worth the Headache, and this will be volume 3, as the NBA continues to intertwine themselves with gambling and just getting caught up in so many scandals, and the rabbit hole gets deep. As in this segment, we're going to get into it layer by layer. We're going to hear from the FBI Director Kash Patel, as well as Adam Silver going on the defense a few days earlier because he knew this was coming down the pipeline. We'll also hear from Michael Franzese of the Colombo family out in New York. His father was the underboss, and he was also an active mob member, and he kind of gave insight to how competitive athletes are really the perfect audience to get caught up in gambling debts and become the perfect victim for the mob to begin to set things up as far as their games. We'll also hear from former disgraced NBA referee Tim Donahue, as he gave great insight of how tied up the NBA is with this whole gambling situation. Even though for the most part we gotta watch what he says with a keen eye, because he's not really as credible, but he gave great insight to how his situation was dealt with the NBA internally. And they have a lot of connections with the judges to kind of make things go under the rug a certain way. And finally, we'll get into the Klutch sports side, as we'll hear from a former NBA player of how LeBron's team really has a lot of deep reach. They have a lot of connections, as the Damian Jones portion of this whole scandal have many people wondering, why does a non-Laker employee have such insights to what's going on within the organization and how that ties back to Klutch Sports? So this is going to be multi-layered, but first we're going to start off with the FBI Director Kash Patel from the Southern District of New York. As we always hear about that district loves high-profile cases, and they're very clout-chasing. And watch right here as the FBI Director Kash Patel points out that quite a few people associated with the NBA is involved in this situation, and he even mentions the La Cosa Nostra, but yet we haven't heard any names tied into the mob actually being revealed. Ever since the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of mafia members, they end up snitching in jail, let's keep it a buck. And it's not too far-fetched to believe that a lot of the mafia does have ties to federal government agencies. They're almost hand in hand. Once again, we only hear about NBA players' names. There has been no other mob members' names released. But you guys check out how the director of the FBI addressed the press and mainly framed it around the professional athletes / coaches or just personnel. Very interesting.
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Cosa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than any. I'll just highlight some of the details in the case and the FBI work, and then you'll hear from the others. But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches.
Now right there, notice how he's not going to mention anyone from the mob family, but initially he introduced it as the La Cosa Nostra and the NBA. And we all know some of these guys like Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, they don't necessarily have the connections to start running a whole gambling ring. It's definitely not too far-fetched to believe the FBI and a lot of the La Cosa Nostra, as he made reference right here, are working together hand in hand.
What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Cosa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families.
But yet, start naming some of them specifically, start naming some of the members. We have not yet heard any names. And some of you fellas could comment below if there's an update or if you find any names, because I don't see any specific mob members' names tied into this case.
And you'll hear more about those details today. The charges and the arrests that were taken down across this country range from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, robbery, illegal gambling. This FBI will leave no room for any perpetrator of crime across this country. You hear a lot about our work of defending the homeland and crushing violent crime. Well, this work is also representative of a colossal portion of the FBI's mandate to keep America safe and to keep our entertainment industry fair and secure. The men and women that are standing up here today worked tireless hours, days, months, and years. And the fraud is mind-boggling. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars. It's not even millions of dollars. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery across a multi-year investigation.
And across many states, that sounds like well-connected people. This is where Adam Silver has to be careful with this marriage with gambling. Let's go back to his initial statement, the way it was introduced. It should have been, the La Cosa Nostra has invaded some of the NBA players to widespread corruption. It should have been introduced like that, but he made it seem like some of the NBA affiliated people was in cahoots, as if they created a whole ecosystem of just mass corruption and just money laundering and racketeering, etc., etc.
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Cosa Nostra. But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. The charges and the arrests that were taken down across this country range from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, robbery, illegal gambling.
Now, this is why I call this series When the Money's Worth the Headache. Because back in 2023, when this whole marriage between the NBA and the sports gambling books happened, New York State alone in the first quarter made $19 billion. Make no mistake about it, that $19 billion, not only the local state and the federal government is eating off that money, as well as the NBA and the casinos. And that's only in one quarter. But as the layers begin to peel back of this story, a lot of elements that was already sprinkled throughout the internet was already there in regards to NBA players being involved in some questionable gambling activities. As professional poker player Matt Berkley had talked about playing in a game with Chauncey Billups and how he already knew he was scamming as the original podcast was posted back in 2023.
There are a lot of stories about it. There's one that cropped up. This must have been like 5 years ago, 2019-ish, I think, 4 years ago, where there was this game. It started in LA and then it came to Vegas for a few days, and it was all built around Chauncey Billups. And I had heard about the game, and the person who told me about it was like, "Look, I know the game runners. I'm telling you 100% this game is on the up and up." And I was like, "Well, I know a lot of the people that are involved, and I'm telling you 100% that it is not on the up and up."
Yeah.
And we kind of went back and forth, and I agreed that like I just wasn't going to go play it, but I had some friends who went and played it both in LA and in Vegas, and it obviously like was for sure confirmed to be cheated. Mm-hmm. Like people who clearly didn't even understand the rules of No Limit Hold'em are just like jamming hundreds of big blinds in with like a gutty and then just drilling it. Yeah. Only the pros are losing. Like
how is it figured out? Like it just
I can't remember if this was the game where
no over the loudspeaker.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
That was Pierce.
Oh, okay. Well, it's still, I mean, it's not like Chauncey and Pierce don't know each other. You know, I feel like it's probably the same crowd overlapping there,
Gotcha.
but maybe not. Either way, it was basically confirmed amongst all of the pros that the game was cheated, but there's just no recourse.
Gotcha.
And they got absolutely filleted.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no recourse in a lot of these situations.
Well, it's tough too whenever you're dealing with somebody like high profile like that, because they carry a lot of weight and hold a lot of power. So all you can do is like kind of unite together and threaten to publicly out him or extort him in some sort of capacity. In which case, good luck.
Yeah.
It's like this guy beat rape charges. You think he cares about you calling him a cheater?
Yeah, I mean, and like from other aspects, like most people that are cheating, they come prepared for a situation when it does happen. So like, you just can't really out them when they're there. You don't want to call it out in public. Like,
What was crazy to me is that that some of the guys that I'm friends with that played the game like kept going back, not fully convinced. Like, just like, these guys are so bad, man. They're so bad. It's like, yeah, they know what's fucking coming, man. Like, you don't have to be good if you can, know the deck start to finish. It's like, of course they look bad. They're putting it in with no equity, knowing that they're going to win the fucking hand.
Yeah.
Pretty tough,
Pretty interesting shit.
Now, I do have an example of one of the hands he was referring to, because when you look at it, it's some amateur shit when it comes to poker. First of all, Chauncey Billups was dealt a 5-6, and his opponent had a queen jack. And for those of you who are watching the visual version, I'll put something up. And the first 3 cards that came out was a jack 7-3. Then the 4th card that came out, which is a turn, was a queen. So Chauncey Billups' opponent had matching queen jacks, and he only had a 5-6. So he's shooting for the straight here. And the final card on the river was a 4, which gave Chauncey the straight. So for some of you that are not familiar with poker, for him to get a 4 and to chase that straight on the last card when he has a 5-6, and just his betting patterns by the pros watching him throughout the course of the cards coming out, they can tell if he's bullshitting, if he's an amateur, because eventually after the last card came out, they kind of remember his betting pattern, and that might not fit in with what a pro would have done. So right then and there, they could spot out that something is up. And if he wins multiple hands the same way, it's a kind of a dead giveaway. And Pat McAfee actually did a follow-up with Matt Berkley, this professional poker player that had made this statement back in 2023. Again, we're leaving no receipts unturned. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I watched your clip from 2023, and basically the way you were laying it out is as if you understood, or people that were playing in this particular game or these particular games know when it's rigged or when it's not rigged. How is that the case, and what have you heard about these particular poker games that maybe got them caught, if you will, Berkey, if that's a good enough question to kind of get started?
Yeah, sure. I don't want to lay it on the people who got taken for a ride in these games and make it seem like it was so obvious that they should have known. But it is one of those things where when you as a professional who don't really offer too much to a high-profile game like this that's being run around celebrities, get the invite, your radar should kind of go up. And this particular game, it was happening both in Los Angeles and in Las Vegas. I had gotten multiple invites, as well as a lot of friends who don't really have access to these sort of private games. And it just seemed quite suspicious to me. So I was lucky enough to pass. I had a lot of friends who lost, hundreds of thousands of dollars in these games just with the opportunity to play with a few celebrities. But yeah, once you get outside of the casino, the rules get bent quite a bit.
And the rules are for sure getting bent all over the place, as the NBA is reconsidering the way injuries are reported ever since this scandal came out. But ironically, Adam Silver has sat down with Pat McAfee just 2 days before, as he spoke about some of the nuances between the league and some of the gambling partners and some of the issues that have been going on. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I like where your league's at. I assume you do as well. Now, the world that we're in is a little bit different than maybe 15, 20 years ago, especially with all eyes on the money side of things during these games. Go ahead, D-Butch.
Yeah, Adam, with the huge growth of the game and obviously growth of sports betting as well, I can't wait to put a 12-game team parlay together tonight. But how do you balance, I guess, protecting the integrity of the game? And how do you balance that with the growth and obviously the relationships that you have with these sports betting partners?
Interestingly enough, I think in the modern digital era, the choice is between legalized sports betting or illegal sports betting, not do you want sports betting or not. And so ultimately our view has been that since we know there's going to be enormous betting on sports out there, there always has been lots of illegal betting when I was younger, but it was much more difficult before the internet. You'd have to meet someone on the corner, or there were betting slips, things like that, or you had an old school bookie. Of course, now you can just bet on your phone. So on one hand, with this regulated structure of legalized betting, we can monitor it in ways that were unimaginable.
And you can also access the money in ways that was never done before. AKA, Adam Silver is just saying either way, the money's going to be made by someone. We might as well make it ourselves. And in a way, this corporatization of just gambling, it's never going to work, because even the casinos out in Vegas, they're not directly involved with the underworld, but they do have connections where they can make a couple of phone calls and find out what's really happening. So that part of it has always been around, and it's not going anywhere. It's almost like the strip clubs. You're going to find people who are scammers, drug dealers, pimps. The underworld it's all over that place. It's always around it. You may not see it directly, but it's lingering around in those places somewhere.
Years ago, that if there's any aberrational behavior, people betting large numbers who hadn't historically done so, just opening an account to place bets, or even the geo-targeting, we know exactly from where the bets are being placed. I mean, very specifically, if you're in an arena and place a bet, we know you're in the arena. In many cases, we know where in the arena you are when you place that bet. So sort of analogize to a stock market where there's, of course, there's a legal framework, but there's lines that make activity illegal, like insider trading, for example. So you have potentially the equivalent in sports where somebody may have inside information. It could be a player, and the worst case scenario is a player who's trying to impact their own performance for a bet, or it may be people around a player, and it may be unintentional on the part of a player, but somebody who's around the player knows that the player isn't feeling well or isn't going to play, even though that hasn't been announced yet.
Now, again, remember, this is 2 days before the FBI released, the initial reporting on just Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier getting locked up. And it sounds like Adam Silver already knows what's coming down the pipeline, because he's describing Damian Jones, who also got caught up in this scandal, as he knew certain information from LeBron, as he didn't play a particular game. And Damian Jones, they do have evidence of him messaging other people to place bets. So Adam Silver right here is definitely trying to soften the blow as he's playing his cards ahead of schedule.
So, we have a framework, a structure in place to monitor, to prevent those kinds of things happening, so that there is the information is available to potential bettors, so that it's a level playing field in terms of placing those bets. But there's no question, it introduces a whole new set of issues. One of the issues you see in arenas, and I hear from players and coaches on this, are fans. I mean, who are yelling out about, especially when it's a prop bet. It's
my parlay! Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's often the case that, your team wins and a player scores, 25 points, but the fan bettor had bet that the player was going to score 28 points or 30 points or whatever else. So I would say one thing, we sent a memo out to our teams recently, and we made it clear in conversations with them that we want to see strict enforcement of those rules. I mean, we have to protect the competitors. We want to protect the environment in the arena of people getting out of hand. I mean, but as I said, we accept betting is legal in roughly 35 states now in the United States. It's unlikely to go away. I think probably there should be more regulation, frankly. It may be surprising to hear from me. I wish there was federal legislation rather than state by state. I think you got to monitor the amount of promotion, the amount of advertising around it. And also, we've pulled back. It's not completely in our control, but we've asked some of our partners to pull back some of the prop bets, especially when they're on two-way players, guys who don't have the same stake in the competition, where, it's too easy to manipulate something which seems otherwise small and inconsequential to the overall score.
AKA doing things like how Terry Rozier and Jonte Porter end up getting caught up with.
Maybe, the couple rebounds that some player, gets or whatever. So, we're trying to put in place, and learning as we go and working with the betting companies, some additional controls to prevent sort of some of that manipulation. Well, we deal obviously case by case with anything comes up, but I think we've made it clear to our players, and I think Andre Iguodala, who's head of the Player Association, former All-Star champion himself, knows that there's nothing more important than the integrity of the competition. So if a player steps over the line, I mean, there have been players, I think, as you know, who've been banned from the game because of betting. We have, we monitor really closely. There's signs in every locker room. We have continuing education throughout the year, just so guys know that, it's a really bright line. Because the problem with all those prop bets is that I always worry, I'm sure there are players who would never ever think they would want to manipulate the ultimate outcome of the game. They wouldn't want to do that to their teammates. They wouldn't want to do it to themselves, but are thinking, oh, what's the difference if, I've won fewer, more rebound or whatever else. So that's why, we've made it clear there's very strict enforcement that anything you do around betting, just the mere betting on a game, even if it had nothing to do with your particular performance, will result in a suspension, and possibly the end of your career. So, again, we live in an environment of legalized sports betting. And by the way, not just in the United States, but the NBA is a global league. I mean, remember, when sports betting was legalized in the United States, it was already for decades had been widely legal throughout Europe, betting parlors throughout London. Again, most of the action is now online, but that's actually a good thing that's online, because when people aren't using cash, you have to identify yourself to the betting company. You're putting in a credit card. And again, so if there's something unusual that's happening, or if somebody and there's a whole separate issue about problem gambling. So let's remove sort of irregular activity among participants in the game. But then there's people clearly who get sucked in and are betting too much money.
As gambling has always been a habit, no one gets rich off of gambling. It's really a fucking habit at the end of the day. And also, all these sports betting books, they're working with third-party companies where they actually warn each of them when irregular betting happens, or certain accounts, how often you win. You may get different odds, or you may even get kicked off that platform. So just keep in mind, there is a control center to all this.
And or betting over their means. And so there's also ways to monitor those things and to cut those people off if the betting company detects that there's an issue.
Yeah, we had some friends that had that happen to them from Sportsbook. Looking at you again, Bruce. And looking at you again, Bruce. And we like that. Got him out of a potential spiral, though. And I agree that it has gotten to a much better place in the gambling world. But for you guys to have to navigate it, we're appreciative of the amount of thought that you put into it, because the integrity of the game is everything.
Yeah.
And that's what Adam Silver is doing this interview for, the integrity of the game before the feds fucking drop this major bombshell on the league.
What are we betting? What are we watching if we don't, if we don't think that's a big deal?
And oddly enough, I mean, even the bettors want to be ensured that there's integrity behind the data, because if they think it's not a level playing field, or somebody has information they don't, they won't bet your sport.
Yeah, they're on the take. Listen, if they're going to be on the take, I would like to know that they're on the take so we can do that, because then they feel like they're getting bamboozled. We appreciate that the NBA will continue to be a sport that we can all, definitely know what's going on wherever we place our wagers on.
Now, as we know, there's multiple angles that this whole gambling situation is intertwined with the league, but they're reconsidering the way information kind of gets out as far as injuries right before the games, because they've kind of been a little loosey-goosey about it. They've been operating in a gray area around the injury reporting. Last minute guys completely get taken off the list, or last minute guys get put on the list and then they're out. So the league is kind of making alternative changes about that. But at the same time, Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics has spoke about how the league being intertwined with this whole gambling situation is going to cause them to get caught up in a lot of different things. And player safety is one of them, with guys getting angry about their parlay. And also, former Cavaliers coach JB Bickerstaff, his family was threatened in their home about fans and their parlays.
I think be open to having a conversation. I don't think yet once from my conversations with the union of the NBA has been like, how can we protect players more with the environment? There's been little to no conversation around that. It's all about how can we increase business and increase revenue. And I'm not sure, if we're having enough conversations like what is the aftermath or the consequences some of that stuff has. I think a lot more could have been done to help players or prepare players, but even in the aftermath, I don't think little care or attention to detail goes into it. They're like, you make X amount of money or X, Y, and Z, you should be able to deal with all the extra negativity, the people approaching you, is leading to situations that we can avoid if more conversations were had right now.
Again, when the money is worth the headache, certain things are getting overlooked. But now we're going to hear from a former top-level ranking mob member, Michael Francis of the Colombo family out in New York. And he's son of the former underboss, Sonny Francis. Like many other mob members, he got caught up. He did some Fed time for about 4 years. And a lot of these guys, I'm not sure about him per se, but a lot of these guys, I don't want to say necessarily turn snitch, but they sort of, they've entered the media space. Whether they started their own companies or they hopped on other large platforms and they kind of told their stories. They cashed in the whole aura of just the mob life. And in a way, it's sort of self-snitching as they reveal a lot of the inner nuances and a lot of the dynamics that played out. But right here, Michael Francis gives great insight to how this underworld kind of reels former athletes and current day athletes in with their addiction of competition. And once they get into debts, they kind of lure them into this spider web where they really can't get out of, and they might even have to end up fixing certain outcomes of a couple of games. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
I had 12 or 13 bookmakers working for me at that time. And so obviously I knew a lot of athletes get in trouble all the time, with respect to gambling. It happens. I don't like to throw a wide net over everybody, but listen, you got to understand with athletes, gambling is an extension of their competitiveness. They raise the stakes when they gamble. And this is what happens. Many of them get in trouble, whether they be in pros or in college. But it's been happening, and it will continue to happen. Now, 4 of the 5 New York families were involved in this investigation. It just broke this morning. And, oddly enough, the Colombos, my former associates, my former family, they weren't involved. So either they were smart and didn't get themselves in trouble, or somehow they're missing the boat. I don't know.
Or somehow they might be working with the feds on another case. Let's not get it twisted.
I don't know what it is, but let's get into this a little bit. Give you an example. Back in my day, NFL player, right? And this happened. I'm not going to mention the names. More than once, but this happened. Bookmaker working with me, he comes to me, hey, this player from the Jets, he's into me really heavy. He owes me 50 grand. Okay, what do you want to do? Should I bring him to you? How should I collect? 50 grand? Let him get into you for 250 grand, 300 grand. What are you doing? You're writing an entry on a piece of paper. It's not costing you a penny. He's a bad gambler. Let him get into you heavy and then bring him to me. Boom. Before you know it, he's into me $250,000, $300,000, right? I bring him to me. Sit down. Hey, how you doing? Good. You owe me a lot of money. Oh, you didn't know it was me? Sorry, yeah, we don't always put that out there. But it's me. You owe me a lot of money. How you going to pay? You got to pay. You got to figure it out. I'll tell you what. You know what? I love your team. I like the way you play. I'm going to give you a break. You owe me $250,000, right? You don't have to pay me right away. You pay me 2% a week in cash. When do you get paid? Every Monday you be here with the cash. Don't miss. Don't miss. And I'll let you slide for a while. I don't care. That's fine with me. He wants to do anything to get out of the room. He leaves. What do we find out? We're tracking a guy. He goes to another bookmaker somewhere else, right? And he's trying to make up the loss by betting somewhere else. Well, we all know what's going on. So pretty soon, he can't even pay me the 2%. We call him back in the room. Hey, let me explain something to you, my friend. You don't get away with a gambling debt. You got to pay me. You got a rich uncle? You got a godfather? Who would it? Go rob a bank. I don't care what you do, but you're going to pay me. That's it. Well, Michael, let me tell you that. For some reason, I got a soft spot with you. I don't know why. So here's what we're going to do. You're a good running back, right? Yeah. All right. First 3 times next game, you put the ball on the ground. What? You heard what I said. Put the ball on the ground. First 3 times. You're a wide receiver? Okay. Make sure that that ball doesn't go into your hands. That's it. You're a quarterback? First 3 times you get the ball, put it in the other team's hands. I'll worry about the rest. I'm getting an edge now. I know what to do. You're going to do this over a period of whatever amount of games I tell you, and that's how we're going to even up the score. And if you don't do it, you don't want to know what happens at that point. You know, I think you understand where I'm coming from. That's it. Very powerful. That's how you get these players to work with you. NBA player, the same thing. I don't care what you do. Foul yourself out of the game. Do whatever. Referee, same thing.
The human element is something that Adam Silver, as well as the other board members of the NBA, the other governors, the other owners, they got to take that into consideration with this marriage to gambling. Because when guys get in debt, God knows what they're going to be willing to do. Look at Terry Rozier. Come to find out, he owes the IRS over $8 million. Also, Jonte Porter, he had issues with debt. So he was trying to pay some of it back with the way he was kind of fixing his parlays. So you see the pattern. The same thing would apply to Malik Beasley. He's having issues with being in debt. The human element is a bitch, but once again, when the money is worth the headache, and I'm wondering how big of a headache the NBA is willing to have to keep collecting that money. And speaking of headaches, former disgraced NBA referee Tim Donahue gave great insight to his situation, because whatever he says, we should always look at it with a keen eye, because he's not really as credible. But when he talks about his personal situation and the way the league went about it, this is interesting, the insight that he gave. You guys check it out.
That they need to get gambling under control, and I think that he's going to continue to try to figure out a way to, to put a lid on this, but it's going to be very difficult for him, because I think this is widespread. I think it's going to be very damaging to the league. And, I just received a text message from one of the FBI agents that worked my case, and he basically said that they're not going to be able to cover this up like they covered up my case. I think the David Stern was able to basically put a lid on it and paint me as one bad apple, the only guy involved, and nobody else did anything but me. And
that sounds very familiar, the way he handled the Malice in the Palace. As we all eventually found out that from the legal side, it was found that most of the players involved in the melee, they were actually not at fault. The arena did not hire enough security, and the players were actually under major duress, especially Jermaine O'Neal. He took the league all the way to court. But at the time, David Stern was trying to make examples of certain players, as he was trying to craft the league's image away from a lot of the early 2000s, I would say, thugged out hip hop. The Allen Iverson effect. He was trying to get rid of that aura, the dress code. And remember, the NBA around that time, they did not have the TV money that they have now. So sometimes guys get caught up with talking bad about David Stern implementing that rule. But now we see the fruits of that labor with the league just keep getting larger and larger deals, because them corporate sponsors are not going to support the league if they present a certain aura. And we could see it play out no further than just social media in general. Everyone that's getting advertisements or just any kind of brand deals, they have to put up a certain image. They can't talk about certain topics. So the NBA was under the same type of microscope if they want to keep getting the bigger and bigger deals.
We're going to move on from it. The FBI said that there was 6 or 7 other people that they wanted to indict, and this got shut down from the highest level. And then I find out, after I go to jail, that, a guy by the name of Greg Andres, who was the head of the Eastern District of New York, took a job at a law firm and all of a sudden got all the outside legal counsel work for the NBA. So, it was a situation where David Stern really ran that whole investigation, and it got shut down by the, highest level people in regard to other people being involved.
Hey, my man David Stern ruled the NBA with an iron fist. Hey, he played his cards right. At the end of the day, Tim Donahue should have never been in that situation to begin with, completely compromising the credibility of the NBA. But this time around, Adam Silver is dealing with social media, and we are in the informational age. So finessing out of situations like that is going to be very hard to come by. Even right now, he's trying to tap dance his way out of the Steve Ballmer situation, even though on paper, this looks like it could be over a $500 million cap circumvention. Like, he spent $500 million just to pay Kawhi a couple $100 million. So you got independent creators like Pablo Torre taking advantage of the media landscape, being able to publish that and broadcast it to a mass audience. And that's something that wasn't available before when David Stern was dealing with the league and the Tim Donahue gambling situation. And last but not least, there is a Klutch Sports dynamic to this whole situation, as people are questioning why Damian Jones was not necessarily part of the Lakers, but was still getting inside information in regards to the team. Now, LeBron James and Klutch Sports are a very powerful organization, make no mistake about it, because they even got Damian Jones a job on ESPN where he was actually crafting LeBron's image, speaking very highly of him and just defending all the naysayers on First Take. Even when Darvin Ham was hired as the Lakers coach, we come to find out it's almost as if it was forced, but Damian Jones was kind of pointed to be one of the advisors on the team, even though they have no prior relationship. And Chauncey Billups, after being arrested, was wearing a Klutch Sports shirt. I'm wondering, what is he trying to bat signal to the viewing audience or even LeBron James himself? And Jeff Teague right here gives us great insight to how powerful LeBron James and Klutch Sports are. Keep in mind, LeBron is backed up by the NBA, Nike, Warner Brothers, the parent company of TNT, and also an outside company out in London that's responsible for major Hollywood productions. Anytime you see these highly produced late night shows or even certain movies, the same company, I believe is Fullwell 73. You fellas can go ahead and look that up. It's a pretty powerful production company. That's really what makes LeBron James the GOAT. It's an off the court thing. The way he's handled his business, put his friends in proper position, the way he's aligned himself to make money even after he leaves the game. It's really something worth truly to be said. It's something that he doesn't get enough credit for. But you guys check out what Jeff Teague had to say about LeBron's powerful backers. And every once in a while, I'll check in.
But bro, the moment I said anything, anytime you say anything about Bron, people call you and say, hey man, you might want to chill. I know you got some funny stories and shit. Hey, leave LeBron alone. I'm like, God damn.
Okay.
I came on here and apologized. Sorry. I'm talking these some real people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, nigga. You funny, nigga. And you getting a little too funny. All right, my fault, brother. So I know ain't nothing getting by they whole camp. They run the league. They whole camp run the league.
Yeah, bro. They too plugged in. For somebody not to know an inkling or something, I ain't saying they do an all-out play. I just feel like somebody, bro. If not, then that's one of the most...
Rich Paul, AD agent.
Yeah. That's one of the most covert operations in NBA history.
You gotta know.
Covert, get the fuck out of here. This shit's been fairly obvious for years. Even the way AD went to the Lakers. I'm surprised other teams ain't called for an investigation for player tampering. Get out of here, man. Come on. What are we talking about here? It's fairly obvious. LeBron went to LA and LA became Klutch Sports Central.
Somebody knew something. I don't know who, what, but somebody knew something. Even if they didn't know it was going to happen, when, what, where, why, somebody knew something, bro.
It looks like Damian Jones fucked up. He got some inside information, and the feds got the text and everything. Him saying, you know, to place bets, LeBron is not playing, he's out sick. And even one time he tried to do it again, and it didn't work. The Lakers end up winning, or the bet didn't go the gambler's way, and then he end up telling them, hey, you win some, you lose some. So it is what it is. The NBA hasn't reached that point where they need enough Tylenols, because the money is definitely worth the headache. So that's all I have for today. You fellas definitely hit up the link in the description below. Check out the NBA True Stories playlist and also my NBA Hardwood Nuance playlist. There's definitely a lot of dope stuff in there. And until next time, you fellas stay safe. Peace.